Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you once again for joining us for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazenko, science fiction and horror and dystopian thriller author, should I say, reader and one of your hosts and co-founder of the Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader and your other co-founder and host, coming to you from Wurundjeri country. We were briefly together in Corner Country,
That's
but we
right.
didn't quite get around to doing recording.
No, because as you discovered, it is just so fantastic down here, or up there, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah, up there. I have to admit that South Australia did put on some fairly fabulous weather, and it was brilliant to look around the countryside and see some of the, the food, the wine, the culture, the history, the wildlife. Yeah, it was lovely. So we did some chatting, but not some recording.
No, there was zero business for that visit.
That's not true. That's not true. Remember the tax.
Yes, of course, yes. So there were several meetings.
Strategy meetings.
Strategic meetings, yes, absolutely. The only available office was the fantastic Mexican restaurant. That's for one.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good, wasn't it? No, I'm just, it was so fantastic to play host and have you visit down South Australia. And yeah, I too was super happy that the weather put on a show, because, it's always the way sometimes when you get visitors and you'll have 10 days of sunshine and they'll land for 2 days, then that'll be 2 days of rain and they leave and it goes back to perfect sunshine. But no, we've had pretty much sunshine for almost a week. We're lucky, almost for a good few weeks there. That we had our lucky streak broken yesterday and today. Not so much yesterday, but today. But yes, it was fantastic to see you. And yeah, as I said, it was an absolute pleasure to take you and everybody around to all the different sites that is my backyard.
Yes, it's a pretty fantastic backyard. And I must say the weather when we got back to Melbourne was a little bit sad and rainy and cold. So, yeah, at least I felt like I'd been on holiday, which is really important for, so many people around Australia, around the world, given the last couple of years, and very happy to contribute to the South Australian economy.
Yes. And of course you did go overseas too, of course.
Oh, well. Overseas, over straits. Yeah, we went to Kangaroo Island, which was brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got the relatively calm seas, which is always good too, because that can get quite rough, as we were chatting earlier.
Yes, in fact, I was chatting to somebody the other day who said they were so sick on the way over that they were horrified about coming back.
Yes. Well, a hot tip for all our listeners out there, should you be venturing to Kangaroo Island, and if you do find yourself in rough seas, please avoid thinking it's going to be super fun when the boat lifts high on a crest of a wave to jump up, because then, of course, when the boat goes down, you're still in the air, and it can be a long, long drop down to the deck, so, as I discovered with a good friend of mine, and we were both quick to find our seats. But yes, nonetheless, you've returned and you've settled back home, and now we can get back on the hot seat, do the podcast, and we are up to episode number 50.
So episode 50. Go, Darren. What is 50 all about? Oh, before we go into episode 50, Kangaroo Island is known by its Indigenous name, Kata Pintinga, which is literally Island of the Dead in the language of the Corner people. So there you go. And did you know it's Australia's third largest island? I was a bit surprised at how big it was.
I actually thought it was the second, so there you go.
So Melville Island apparently is a little bigger. So, Tassie, then Melville, and then Kangaroo Island.
Oh, okay. Yes, second biggest when you exclude Tasmania.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I remember reading. But what? So Island of the Dead, did you say?
Island of the Dead. So that's as much as I got into the Indigenous history, but I must have a bit more of a look about, fantastic.
Interesting. Sounds like I've got a new setting for a new book there.
Yeah.
Research
Oh,
time.
there'd be some nice eerie spots there and hard to escape in a thriller.
Yes. Even because, of course, if you want to go swim, there's lots of seals there, and
Yes,
you know what
and
likes to eat
dolphins.
seals.
So many dolphins. It was just lovely.
And lots of sharks. So
yeah,
there
we
is
didn't
no
see any of
escape
those.
from the island of the dead. But yes, number 50, which is a huge number, and halfway to 100, but still it's 50 more than zero. So I love it. It's I just can't believe we've made it this far, and it is amazing. It's been amazing fun. Number 50. So now I'm starting to feel like we're kind of getting a bit of a foundation of episodes, which is really cool.
I think 50 is a pretty significant number. I reckon you could say that is, significant.
Yeah, so in high school days, I'd say that's a pass.
True. No, 51. I think you got to get to 51.
So as long as I saw a 5 or above, or when those tests came back, I could breathe a sigh of relief. But, you know,
Solid
of course, there are other alternative meanings for the number 50. And so, for example, when it comes to numerology, the number 50, well, the purpose of the number 50 apparently is to promote fusion between body and soul, mind and spirit. So life is a continuing education for the number 50. So I don't know where the number 50 exists to learn. But anyway, as this energy seeks to learn their real values relating to their ultimate goals and aspirations, and learning to obey their inner feelings to know thyself. The happy disposition of the 50 destiny number attracts friends with good fortune, friends and good fortune, should I say, and they know how to take advantage of all the blessings, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So I am still far from a numerology expert, and I'm not sure. I don't know. It is very interesting. It is a very hard science that I might have to do the rabbit hole jump into, because, you know, the ironic thing about numerology, and this is why it's so complicated and difficult to grasp, because if I open up a different website, it will give me a different meaning for the number 50. You see, so the art is picking one. No, so that's number 50. But super happy to be here. Super happy to get back in the hot seat. We had a little bit of a break there while you enjoyed the beautiful South Australia, and obviously went to Mount Gambier, and
Yes.
best of all, a road trip with, you know, your husband and best friend, and that's the most important thing, is the journey, never the destination. So, but here we are. So, episode 50. How about we jump to some news?
Go for it. Bring it on.
Okay, so on the news front, of course, we're going to start with all the new book editions, or at least some of the new book editions to the Australian Book Lovers website, and we've got a very cool range here today. So I'm just going to start with a book titled Restoring Destiny, and that is by author Elaine, Ouston, and it can be found under our fantasy genre as well as our young adult genre. So here we go. Restoring Destiny is a fantasy / coming of age story of teen romance, magic, evil, and a fight to save a life and right the wrongs of yesteryear. Torn from their cloistered world, pursued by troops, Race and Candace battle the elements of an unknown world and struggle to develop their emerging magic powers. Their mother is to be executed at the next full moon by the evil ruler who invaded their world. Only they can save her, take back the land, and free the imprisoned king and their father. With a guide and 2 teens, they travel through a tunnel in the Mountain of Dread, battling the life-threatening elements to find the only man who can help them. But unexpected danger comes from one they trusted. And that is Restoring a Destiny by Elaine Ouston. Again, can be found under our fantasy genre or within the young adult section. So, yeah, cool little read there.
Yeah, I must admit, I saw that cover and thought, "Ooh, this one I haven't read."
There you go. Yes.
Might have been trawling our fantasy, pages for new reads. So.
Yes, and guess what? You found one. Yay!
I did.
No, the fantasies it's becoming huge selection there. All of the genres are growing by the day and getting bigger and bigger. So whatever, for the book lovers out there, whatever, brings a smile to your face and warms your heart when it comes to books, or chills the blood and tingles the spine when it comes to, if you like, horror and whatnot. There's all sorts in there, so plenty to look at. But one which is, I guess, kind of in the theme of numerology and perhaps the mixing of science and the spiritual, we have a book called Truth Come to Light, which is part one of the Enlightenment trilogy, and it is by author Taryn Feldmann, and this one is a new addition to our science fiction genre. So Truth Come to Light reads as follows. Humanity asks life's biggest questions. Who made us? Who arrived in the past? Where are they now? And where are we going? 3 archaeologists, Dr. Paige Andrews, Lauren Williams and Caleb Daniels, ask those questions and uncover the truth in Egypt, Mexico and Jordan. At each site, a mysterious substance is found, and these archaeological finds lead them to a mythical city that ancients named Atlantis. Dr. Paige uncovers a weapon that can destroy a whole planet in a second. She obtains the weapon in order to keep it safe. Agent Jones, who works for the government, is after Paige and her team. The government want to use the mysterious substance to control the archaeologists, but during a race to save the planet, Paige, Lauren and Caleb reunite and discover the link they share. Time is running out, and together they try and save the planet from destruction and control. And that is Truth Come to Light, part one of the Enlightenment trilogy, again by author Taryn Feldmann, under our science fiction genre.
There's so many different sub-genres within science fiction.
Oh, they're endless. I think
yes,
you can...
yeah.
Because
Because I'm still involved in the the self-published science fiction competition. We're down to our semi-finalists, and they're so different. Just amazing where people's minds go to and what qualifies as science fiction. Yeah, good.
Oh,
anyway.
it's like, yeah, and it can be as huge as a intergalactic
epic.
battle, or it could be like
no.
a little robot by himself in a room. It's
Yes.
Yeah.
I am also reading The Expanse. I'm up to book 6. Because I
Ah,
wanted to take some books away with me that were not ebooks. So I borrowed some from the library and took them with me when I went on my holiday. Really good. Yes, I've been reading some sci-fi, which is brilliant. But yeah, dystopian, paranormal, space opera, military, all sorts of things. And even, just ones that are just that little bit weird. There's just a couple of things that change, and alternative histories, so many things. But anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole though.
that's the sci-fi rabbit hole.
Yes.
Which you can find yourself being sucked along at warp speed, drive speed, light speed, all sorts of speeds in sci-fi.
Through portals, all sorts of things,
Yeah. Well, this one is, the next book isn't sci-fi, but the next one is actually found under our mystery and thriller genre. Mm-hmm. And the book is called Love and Retribution by author Catherine McCullough. Love and Retribution reads as follows. It is July 1943 and the world has been at war for almost 4 long years. One morning, young widow Emmy Penry Jones discovers 2 men washed up on the beach below her house on the west coast of Cornwall. Emmy is used to rescuing washed-up sailors, the deadly battle of Atlantic exacting a heavy toll on shipping. But these men are not the shipwrecked sailors she has rescued before, and Emmy is soon drawn into a web of intrigue that will test both her ingenuity and her patriotism. Rocked by accusations of war crimes against a man she knows to be innocent, Emmy launches a bid to defend him, all too aware that the accusers could turn on her. But the trial marks a turning point, and Emmy is drawn further into a deadly cycle of post-war retribution from which only one man can save her. And that very gripping synopsis is again for Love and Retribution by Catherine McCullough, which is really striking sort of imagery I get from that. Finding washed up soldiers and bringing them. It's quite intense little synopsis. So. And sticking with our mystery and thriller genre, we have a book called Crime Writer by author Sheppard. So
Great name.
Yeah, I think so. One of my favourite guitarists was Darren, or Dime. But yeah, it's Sheppard. And that was Pantera, by the way. So Sheppard delivers a smart and witty caper about a crime novelist who recruits her main characters to investigate her maybe unfaithful fiancé. So in real life, she's meant to be planning a wedding to adorable billionaire Daniel Bradley, but Evie is seriously snarled in the 16th book of a successful crime series. In fact, her protagonists are becoming almost impossible to wrangle. New York police detective Caroline Harding is volatile after a messy divorce, and Detective Jay Ryan has that heated look in his blue eyes again. They're both sick of being written, and frankly, they're getting a little physical. Evie is beginning to wonder if she's ever going to finish book 16 and get them back into fiction where they belong. But when a disturbingly familiar homicide surfaces in the city papers, it seems as if other, darker characters might have crossed the fiction frontier too, in which case Evie is in a lot of real-life trouble. So, yeah, very funky, cool little idea there, and that's Crime Writer by author Dime Sheppard.
Very good.
Yeah, I like the idea of the characters sort of coming to life and slinking through maybe the city, and maybe a naughty character doing some naughty stuff. That's good. Okay, so now this one is actually, our next book is from our biography and memoirs genre, of course, with my favourite Wombat. And this one is called Blindness for Beginners by author Maribel Steele. Author Maribel Steele, who is legally blind, reveals how she changed a life challenge into a lifestyle she can manage and enjoy, and shows how people who are vision impaired can retain their independence in daily living activities. The sighted reader learns how to support and encourage friends and family with vision loss, and how to avoid awkward interactions and common misconceptions about blindness. Losing sight is a life challenge most people are not prepared to face. In part 1, the author describes her own struggle and tells the story of her own journey to acceptance. Part 2 focuses on strategies for the beginner to blindness and their families. Part 3 offers techniques on being an effective sighted guide and discusses appropriate language and behaviours when meeting a person with a visual disability. I think that's a very important book that should be read, because one, it's obviously a worry for anybody to lose their sight, but to hear from somebody who has gone through that process and it would be quite inspiring, I think. And that's Blindness for Beginners by Maribel Steele under our biography and memoir.
And if you are a subscriber to Australian Book Lovers, to our newsletter, you would have been given a chance to win a copy of Blindness for Beginners, because Maribel sent us a paperback copy, and I think the competition's open for another week or so.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
Sign up on australianbooklovers.com/booklovers and get your entry in pretty damn quick, because we already have a few people in the draw who have requested to win Maribel's book. And that's the only place you can get our giveaways at the moment, is by being a part of the newsletter. And we only really share the newsletters when we have some giveaways and special things to share for our readers.
So jump on in to the newsletter, or subscribe to the newsletter and put yourself in the running to win some cool stuff, definitely. Yeah. And speaking of cool stuff, I've got one more book I'd like to share with all our listeners, and this is actually in our young adult section, and it is called Not Like in the Movies by author Kanako Okoran. Not like in the movies, a quote that is open to interpretation. From the hit tell-all documentary starring 17-year-old Zelda Millette, daughter of award-winning Hollywood leading lady Valeria Millette, now produced as a written edition, you can easily read and learn never-before-seen content, unedited deleted scenes, and enticing stories that will have you itching to hear more. In association with CNN, which is Celebrity News Network, and the Millette family, you'll be able to read Zelda's entertaining dialogue as she candidly navigates through her adolescence growing up in the public eye. And that is Not Like in the Movies by Kanako Okoran. And I think Kanako is only 17, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
She's quite young, yes.
Yes, there you go. And for anybody who might not know who Zelda Millette is, just so you don't get confused, that it is a book of fiction. But it's very tongue-in-cheek by the looks of it, and a very, very fun read. So that is not like in the movies. So if you're into maybe reality TV or the life of a young star, then I think this will be a super, super cool, fun read.
Is it qualified as like a mockumentary? So it's a contemporary...
yes, contemporary, maybe mockumentary in written word or the written form.
No, very clever.
Yes, good on you.
And
Can I go?
possibly our youngest author.
Possibly, yes. I don't have I usually don't discuss ages with anyone, but it just so happened. Kanoko let us know how old she was. Yeah, so that was good.
A teenager, and is booked in for a chat with, she's a few authors away, but not too far. So keep your eye or ear out for when we have a chat to her.
And Kanoko, if you are listening, which I hope you are, I'm a bit jealous because, of course, you come from Tasmania, and that means we are actually the third. Kangaroo Island is only the third biggest island. I thought we were pretty close to being second, but yes, you live on the biggest island, so well done. but no, that's just a handful of some of the new books that you can find, the listings, or the new book listings, should I say, on the Australian Book Lovers website. So just about finished a book and looking for something new to read, or getting some time coming up and deciding to find something to kick back and relax and dive into some new adventures or whatever might float your boat on a literary ocean. You'll find something at the Australian Book Lovers website. So jump on, have a look, and scroll through the genres and find a little bit of magic. And of course, you'll be supporting Australian authors too.
Yes.
And that is my news for this week.
Thank you for that. And the new
okay.
books, I look fairly regularly, but sometimes I need to go back and be reminded. So thanks for that. There are writing festivals and book festivals and art festivals happening all over the place again. Most of them are continuing with, COVID restrictions sort of in place, but there is lots of live stuff happening. So I encourage readers and authors, get out there to those festivals, and big ones like Sydney and Melbourne, and small ones like Hay and Bendigo is on very soon as well. So get yourselves out there and look at that. But wanted to share some news about the Stella Prize. As you know, the Stella is one of my favourite things to support. So the Stella champions the work of Australian women writers, cis, trans and non-binary inclusive. And through a series of strategic initiatives, they try and promote Australian women's writing, support greater participation in the world of books, and they create more equitable and vibrant national culture. So one of their ways they do that is by the Stella Prize, and they've just announced the shortlist. So we had the long list in February. The shortlist came out on the 31st of March, and the winner will be announced on the 28th of April. So in the shortlist, in alphabetical order, by author's own name, the 6 books are Take Care by Eunice Andrada, Drop Bear by Evelyn Araluan, No Document by Anwen Crawford, Bodies of Light by Jennifer Down, Stone Fruit by Lee Lay, and Homecoming by Alfie Shiosaki. So if you are looking for some books and you want to challenge yourself, get out there and try and read, some of those at least, and see if you can pick the next Stella Prize. You've got, what did I say? It was out on the 20th of April. So you've probably got about 2 weeks. See if you can, whiz through those books or just pick a couple and see which one appeals to you and support Australian women's writing. So there you go. First news.
Nice. Yes, cool.
Second thing is for writers. So the Australian Society of Authors, which, as you know, we're very supportive of their advocacy, support and advice. They have announced the launch of Authors Legal. So it's a new non-profit law firm which provides low-cost legal advice exclusively to ASA members. So it's about agreements, it's about ghostwriting, it's about your agent agreements, distribution rights, copyrights. So, whether you're a first-time author or established writer wanting something really specific, that is now available to members of the Australian Society of Authors. So it's not one of the most glamorous sides of writing, but it is so important to make sure that your creative rights are supported. And really interesting, of course, that Victoria Chilak, who is she's a senior lawyer that's involved in this initiative, but she's also a prolific reader. So I think, yes, you've got to have someone who reads and understands. So it was really lovely to see that.
Yeah, that's really
as
cool.
some news. Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty young, but I do remember writing a short Batman story. So with the right lawyer, I can maybe claim that Batman was my idea. Yes, it may have been started in the 40s, but yeah, I'll just have to. Well, a good lawyer who enjoys reading surely would have read a little bit of time travel stuff. So we just have to incorporate that into my. Into my, what do they call it? Am I the plaintiff? Yeah. Into my claim, shall we say.
Fan fiction, there's a bit of a grey area, I think.
Oh, no. I originally wrote Batman.
Oh, you originally?
Yes. And someone stole the idea, went back in time, laid the seeds for what would now become this big superhero thing back in the 40s. And, of course, yes, so good. I may be getting some legal help for that one, I think.
There you go. Yeah. All right, one more winner. This is the Commercial Fiction Prize, because if our readers are looking for books to read, these are some really good books. We have, at the division of HarperCollins and the ASA, announced that Aisha Inoon has won the 2022 Commercial Fiction Prize for unpublished manuscript with her work Untethered. So it's a finally observed contemporary novel of a young Muslim woman's experience of immigration to Australia on leaving behind the political unrest of Colombo in Sri Lanka. So Aisha is a Sri Lankan Australian writer and former journalist who's lived in Sri Lanka, Egypt, India, the USA and Canada, and based the novel in part on her own experience. So, yeah. Very nice. Look forward to seeing that coming up soon. Published in 2023, so keep your eye out.
It's a lot of places to live.
So talking about Aisha's, all her travels, all the countries that she's lived in, it reminds me of the author interview that we have coming up today, which is Stephen Fine. Now, Stephen has lived in a number of countries and had some adventures all over the place. And his interview was really interesting. And, we could have talked for a very long time about things that probably he shouldn't share on the air. So we'll keep some of those a little bit quiet. But it was interesting to talk to Stephen about settings. Things were so important for... you'll hear in the interview a particular incident where he actually stopped on the side of the road and he could see a scene in his book unfolding at that very point. So incredibly influential to think about how setting was a critical part of his story. And I think that so much about setting sets the scene. It's more than just a place, but it is it's such an important story element. So you have detail, you have setting as a story, character in itself. You can immerse the senses. You mentioned, we talked about science fiction and fantasy and the different ways you can start a story and talk about a spaceship and immediately you're in a sci-fi. So it sets the scene. Tell me about what you appreciate about setting, because I know I don't like to get too detailed, but I like enough so that I can ground myself in it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously setting is just, it's vital, it's important. I can't imagine a story being able to be written without some kind of setting. I'm sure it's been done, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But, setting can be a character unto itself, and I was thinking a little bit about settings and how I approach them. And I think, so for example, Dust and Devils, there was two very distinct settings. Two distinct settings. So one being, the Gold Coast. So you've got that, the lights, the action and, the beautiful beaches. And then you had the desert out in the harsh deserts and that sort of harsh landscape. And obviously the book is Dust Devils is a road trip between the two for nefarious reasons. But I did play on it a bit, I think, where your natural thought would be that the desert is going to be kind of the bad place and the Gold Coast the good place, but it's actually, the good place. Yeah, it turns out the desert in a way is the good place, and it turns out, of course, that the evil and the real bad stuff that happens to our main character begins, in the Gold Coast. So it can be used as a sort of a little bit of a trick too, to, I think, for me anyway, where you can sort of not mislead the reader, but have them get a false sense of comfort. Because Dust and Devils is a thriller about serial killers and bikies and detectives and road trips. So it's the whole idea is to keep people guessing and on the edge of the seat. So that's where I think setting can play a big part as well, because we all have our perceptions, but in general, a particular setting can, I guess what you'd say, generic or a cliche vibe. Like, so if you set it on the Greek islands, for example, you'd think of beautiful limestone cliffs and beautiful water, and your first thought isn't all dangerous territory. Whereas if you set it in, remote outback, then of course you think, oh, is that something dicey? Do you know what I mean? It's that's what I feel like. But likewise, I think with See the City Red, the city was a very big part, even though it was a fun place to write about. But that's that dystopian futuristic city. So, and I wanted it to be a little bit claustrophobic. So because in the sense that if you're not safe, if you find that your safety isn't there in the comfort of your own apartment, outside the apartment's even worse. So when one's taken away, you're really suffocated with violence or the threat of violence, in this book anyway, which is all about the first lady born on Mars, or the first human, should I say, born on Mars, who comes down to Earth to help stop what is potentially a world turning to violence. But so that city played a big part there. So I loved it there. I was thinking the Hallucigenia project is where I tried to use that sort of cliche idea. So set, that the main character takes a job that takes him from Sydney to Miami Beach or Miami over in Florida. So, for me, when I think Miami and Florida, it's all palm trees and, tropical warm water and, bikinis and nightclubs and fast cars. And it's a holiday destination. But of course, the protagonist goes there and has that same feeling. And so because we discover the city through the characters' eyes and emotions and, his sort of wandering about. But he finds himself being put at ease by the city because he's sort of blending with those aspects that he preconceived. And of course, that there is where I can pull the rug out as well. So for the character and for the reader. So yeah, so I think settings are fantastic fun, and they can broadcast something, or they could hide something to be revealed later. Just my thoughts. Anyway, that's all I can only talk about how I write.
You dive back into your stories, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's lots of information out there for writers about, tips for choosing the setting, deciding if your story needs a specific setting, if it's a real or imagined place. One that's really important and what I really like is where a setting drives the action. So you imagine, I don't know if people will remember Frank Herbert's Dune, so, set on the world full of sand with the worms and all of those kind of things, absolutely drives the action because it's harsh and difficult to live and all of those things, as opposed to, say, a Jane Austen book set, in England, in, the region where the Bennets are in their house and all those kind of things there, in the country estates and Mr. Darcy and everything else, completely different, but those settings will actually, of course, drive the action. It's interesting to think about what you need to put into a setting, and think about the last book you read and think about what emotion that setting triggered in you, because settings are about more than just the geography. They're about culture and language and values and morals and beliefs and customs and cuisine and traditions and ways of life. So all of those things are part of your setting, and they can be, triggers, a really tactile connection. And, I was reading a great article by quillshift.com about setting and use your quill by Laura. The Safu says, treat it like a character. And I've been to a few writing workshops where, they get people to read a little bit of their story, and I am absolutely guilty of this as a new writer. It's all about the dialogue or the action or whatever. And then someone, like the facilitator will say, well, what's the weather like? What season are they in? How are they dressed for that? How they're being dressed, how does that interact with their story and their action and what the people see? And so thinking about weather, thinking about day and night, thinking about how long the plot is taking. Does it take them weeks to walk somewhere? Do they get there at the speed of light? So all of those things add depth to the world. You don't need to necessarily overwhelm people with detail. You can write lots and then sort of draw it back and leave just little things that the characters do that interact with the setting that actually sets it up really well. But, that place, that time is a really independent part. Think of it as independent because, let's face it, no matter what happens to us, at the moment, the sun comes up tomorrow, regardless of all the things that we humans do on Earth, and hopefully will come for a few more generations. But it's kind of separate, and yet we are so integrated with everything that's going on in the world that we are reliant on that setting as well. So, the physical attributes of place, smell, sound, taste, feel, and all of those things are, create atmosphere. And it helps readers connect to the story, because I think when you read about a smell or a sound or a colour, those things can create that kind of sensory response in yourself. And as a reader, for me, I find that will help me really connect. I like to know a little bit about where I am and what's happening around. And some people are so clever at just really carefully painting lightly where the setting, where the environment is, and you just are drawn in.
There's so many different ways to incorporate setting, isn't there? It may be, if it's a familiar setting, like you said, you can approach it from a minimalist point of view and have the reader's recognition and imagination fill in everything. Whereas, if it's on something like Dune or a sci-fi or a fantasy, then you probably go in a lot of detail, because you want to, obviously the reader's imagination plays a massive part, but you've got to help that imagination, because you're actually bringing in a whole new world that no one else has been to. So there's that sort of, that level of detail you might want to bring in. But what I find fascinating about settings is the different shades that they can come in. So, for example, you can have, the plot or the story that you want to tell. I like to think, okay, is it a story that can, for example, if I was going to write, I don't know, a crime, a bank robbery, then the bank robbery, most likely, it could be set in any city that's got banks. So the actual setting isn't that important for me, as far as it's less of a character and more of just a geographical, place, obviously. But then, is there a tale or plot or whatever you want to call it that it can only happen in this particular setting? So, for example, Dune, that's a story that can only be told on that planet. Their events, do you know what I mean? Or so it's so between the two, and then you've got all the shades in between. So it is it's a fun way to look at it and think, okay, is the geography play a part, or is it merely a background? And then the story becomes such a higher level of focus, or does the story, can it not exist without some element of a particular place and time? And then you say, okay, well then that place may come in more of a focus as well. And of course, the character side of things, that you can apply that in any of the scenarios, but so many different shades, and it really is something to be, when you sit down and start to write, it's one of those things that you have to come up with in your head as far as how you're going to approach it, and have fun with it. So
the hardest thing is that in your mind, as an author, well, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, I see it all. It is really clear in my mind, and how much of that, and how sometimes monotonous, painful is it to try and put that environment, that setting on the page. And as you say,
it's tricky. There's nothing easy about writing, and I'll be the first one to admit, though, that I'd probably find it easier to write a little bit about surroundings or settings, especially because I like to use them as, partly as a background character and influence on the atmosphere, of course, but far easier than I'm always struggling with defining the characteristics of a person. Because I always think, well, even if you explain it, unless it's like, do they wear glasses or not? Do they have scars, etc.? But otherwise, we all have our own sort of archetypes in our head when it comes to characters, I think. And so to try and grab somebody else's archetype and twist it a little bit, I don't think for me, I don't have the confidence as a writer to do that. So, hair colour, height, that sort of stuff, no problems. But yet I might go into fine detail about a wall sometimes, or the alley down the side street in the city, and the how many pieces of trash were left next to the bin, and the bin was half rusted and had a handle missing.
Sometimes that can be really important if you're writing a thriller or a mystery. Those clues, they can be critical, or they can be red herrings.
I was going to say, they could be red herrings. Yes, they could be little tiny literary fibs to trick you. So
a couple of books that might be really useful for people to think about, and I've used books by these authors before, Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. So there is The Rural Setting Thesaurus, and the other one, I think they've got the Urban Setting Thesaurus as well. The Urban Setting Thesaurus and the Occupation Thesaurus. So these are the ladies that originally wrote the Emotion Thesaurus, because I found that I was writing the same word, and to look at the thesaurus, which gives you lots of words with slightly nuanced meanings, is really fantastic. And, so in the rural setting thesaurus, it's really hard to say quickly a lot. But anyway, in that they talk about various settings and how they connect with emotions, and how nature and landforms can be used as part of, your story. So for writers, have a bit of a look at that, and, mirrors to a painful past. Everyone has baggage, and depending on what you're doing, we sort of tap into some of those archetypes or the tropes that we expect in different stories. And the shaggy, gruff, messy detective, we know that they're hiding behind all of that, and really interesting stuff. So readers, next time you're opening your book, have a look at the setting. Ask yourself, when was this happening? Is it current? What was the season? Is it day or night? And how important is that in the story that the author is telling? Or is it kind of in the background or a main part? So, there's a whole spectrum of where that belongs.
Who would have thought there'd be so many facets? And
I know. I could talk about settings. Anyway, let's talk about our author interview that's coming out. So Stephen Fine has a book called Will You Keep Me Tomorrow? Here's the blurb. Chester Jones drives his new car to the forested slopes of the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria, Australia. Okay, I'm just going to stop. One more thing. I love to read about places that I know, and it's one of the things in the self-published science fiction competition, in that what I've noticed sometimes is that authors in other countries love the same. So they write about their own place, but kind of assume that people will know their stuff. So if I was to write about Melbourne and the alleyways of the city, I'd love that because, I've walked those alleyways, between client meetings and all that kind of thing. But if I've never been to New York or Chicago or I have been to London, that's not true, but I haven't been to the US. So there's so often that culture and setting that sometimes you've just got to explain a couple of little bits so that people get the significance, or you just forget about it and make it up like you do in fantasy and hope people will catch up eventually.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, fantasy and stuff, no one's ever been there, but if you write, no matter where you're writing, setting anything here on this little planet called Earth, some people would have been there, some people wouldn't. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? If you've been there, you can read it and it will, spark some memories and
Yes.
emotions. And if you haven't been there, it's fascinating to imagine what it would be like to walk down those streets or
and how much
sail
it's
those
part of it.
seas.
Yeah, which reminds me, of course, that I want to tell you about one of my favourite books before we get back to Stephen's book. So the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is an epic fantasy series written by Stephen Erickson, a Canadian author, and it is just brilliant. But it drops you, bang, right into the middle of the story, and it just is so rich with the world setting, the magic, the gods, the wars that are going on, and it is just really complex. And if you don't keep up, a lot of people just chuck it in about halfway through the book. But it's it's 10 books in the series, but it's just amazing, and I love that epic fantasy stuff. Anyway, so there you go. Let's get back to Stephen.
Mr. Fine.
So, will you keep me tomorrow? Chester Jones drives his new car to the forested slopes of the Dandenong Ranges in Victoria, Australia, in order to deliver an extravagant gift to a client after cinching a massive business deal. On the side of the road, he discovers something that will change many lives, most particularly that of his and his wife's. In the meantime, a shark-eaten body of a woman is washed up on a beach by the Great Ocean Road, and Detective Bruce Nash is called in to investigate. A few days later, the forensic pathologist breaks news to the detective that will change the course of the investigation. Nash eventually retires to the Dandenong area without ever having solved the case. On a walk one day, Bruce is shocked to see someone that is a carbon copy of the woman that washed up on the beach years before. Will You Keep Me Tomorrow will take the reader on a journey of wealth, romance and murder across the globe.
Now, that's a good combination.
That is, isn't it?
Wealth, romance and murder. Well, I'll take two out of three like that.
And look, the cover is fantastic, and I'll let Stephen talk about the cover and how that all came together. Just amazing. And not necessarily quickly. It did take him some years to write the book, but so many things influenced and added into the story. So I think we should just go straight into our chat with Stephen Fine. And hello, book lovers. Welcome to another fantastic author interview. And I have with me today Stephen Irwin Fine. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, Stephen.
Thank you very much. I'm honoured to be here.
Oh, that is lovely to hear. Now, Stephen, it's a little bit of a misty, moisty day up here in the Macedon Ranges. I'm on Wurundjeri country. Where are you coming from today?
Yeah, also in Wurundjeri country, and I'm southeast Melbourne.
Yep, beautiful.
Yep,
It is a lovely
country.
spot and covers a great area, the Kulin, all part of the Kulin Nation. Excellent. Yep. So we know where we're at. We've got names sorted, and I'd like to start with you telling us a little bit about your latest book, Will You Keep Me Tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little bit sensitive to disclosing anything because I don't want it to land up being a spoiler or anything. But then I decided...
No, be very careful. Don't tell us the really good bits, but just perhaps give us your introduction or your description.
Okay, but I will mention a little bit that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What basically happened was a seed that was planted in my mind was quite a few decades ago. My niece and her husband, they now reside in Switzerland. Beautiful people. And she wasn't able to have a child when they got married. And so they flew all over Europe and other countries, etc., to find out what the problem was. And she could never, ever fall pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuck me because she wanted a child just like desperately. And that kind of stuck with me. And I led an adventurous life as a young man. We're living now in Australia.
Tell me more about that later, just saying adventurous. I'll have to hear more, but go on.
Yeah. So as a young man, I was born and brought up in South Africa. And then as a young man, being adventurous, decided to make a bit of a career in military security and so forth, and went to live in Israel. And I lived there for a decade. And after the army and other units that, I landed up being an agent. And being an agent, you get to travel and meet characters, just incredible, the diverse characters you meet. And some of them are splendid people and interesting and clever, and some can be unsavory as well. So something strange happened, because my niece then and her husband, they tried to adopt. And they couldn't adopt because by then she had hit a certain age, and they were very strict in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't adopt because of the age. So I made a call. I don't know why, but I made a call to someone and met with this particular person and said, my niece can't adopt. How can one actually, obviously get a baby for them, but it has to be legal. Mm-hmm. So this character said to me, well, how, if you can't adopt, it's very difficult to get one legally. But I can get one for you.
Oh,
and my heart sort of stopped a beat. Mm. And I said, oh, and I went with the flow of the conversation. I said, oh, where would that baby be from? And at the time, I remember very clearly, he said to me it would be from Russia or China, but it could be from some other country in Europe. And I said, okay. And I don't know why I never asked him. And being very close to my niece, I actually spoke to her at the time overseas. And I said to her, I can get you a little baby. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, no, look, as you know, I've had an interesting, adventurous, and often a bit of a dangerous life in the past. And it's obtainable. And she turned around then and just said to me, look, your honest opinion, Uncle Steve, can you get one? And I said, yes. And she said, and your very, very honest opinion, do you recommend it? And I said, no. and that stuck with me.
Yeah.
That stuck with me.
Yeah.
And then moving to Australia, we moved here a decade ago, but we visited many times, mm-hmm. getting to love the people, getting to love the area all over the show. And in Melbourne, you can just drive 40 minutes to the Dandenongs, which I love. It's forested slopes, and it's absolutely beautiful. And driving there one day with my wife, I envisaged a setting, and I actually pulled off the road up someone's driveway because very narrow there. And my wife said, what's happening? I said, I just want to look at something. And I just got out and I envisaged, and this is something I think writers often do. I'm always describing things in my head. What's the weather like? And, yes. How would I describe it in this setting? And I just envisaged something. So to come back from that very long answer about the book itself is about the main character, who is Chester Jones, mm-hmm. who clinches a massive deal. He's in the mining business, and he drives up to the Dandenongs to deliver this extravagant gift to this particular person that bought all kinds of equipment from his company, and he discovers something at the side of the road, on the side of the road amongst the weeds and the bushes and the trees and the different eucalypti trees. Mm-hmm. And he does a U-turn and he comes back. And that was the actual spot that I got out of my car because I could see it and my heart was
so
thumping. Yeah. And he gets out of his car and he sees a little foundling, little baby dumped in a dirty little, we call it a carry cot or the other names for it, dumped at the side of the road in the weeds and the ferns and the bushes. And this poor little thing is blue at the cold because a dandelion goes down to below freezing on many nights in winter. And this was winter.
There. Yeah.
Yes. And he takes the little one and he takes off his beautiful coat and covers the little one, puts the child on the back seat of his new Audi, and decides he's got to drive as carefully, safely, but as fast as possible to a police station which he passed on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically is the beginning of the book, because he drives to the police station, and he indicates he's going to turn into the police station, and at the very last second, he doesn't turn in, because his mind tells him that his wonderful wife and himself desperately wanted children, weren't able to have children. They live in Turak. They're wealthy. They're good people. And he decides there's only one thing to do. They couldn't adopt. He's about 41 years old. And to keep the baby and bring the baby up, give it the finest education and love and a warm home. And he makes a call to his brother, who's a doctor. And he just says, Lance, you have to be at my place immediately. That is, and what happens with this child as she grows up, that's where the story sort of climbs, takes the reader on a journey, a page-turning journey.
Sounds exciting. And I think that was the chapter that you read on the Australia Reads episode, which was just lovely. And I thought, this
thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, Steve, you've got the beautiful Dandenong Ranges on your cover, I believe. So for people who are not in Victoria, the Dandenongs are part of the Great Dividing Range, and they're about, 35, 40 kilometres out of Melbourne, sort of east of Melbourne they are. So
yeah, that's right.
Tell us a little bit about the inspiration for your cover. I can hear your kind of love of the dandies is there. But, tell us a little bit more.
So basically speaking, it's a place that we visited a lot. I just love it because you're getting out of the, I don't know what you want to call it, a bit of the concrete jungle of Melbourne and suburbs. And you're just driving, like you said, short period away, just 30, 45 minutes. And you've got forests, you've got hills, and you've got kangaroos, and the wildlife, the bird life is just absolutely beautiful. The scenery is stunning. The sunsets, the sunrises in winter, in summer, year round, absolutely beautiful. And it's a spot that I would possibly look at living one day.
It is lovely, yeah.
And I felt for this and felt, well, this is where Chester was driving up. It's a very hilly, twisty slope.
Yes.
With snake bends and things like that. And he was taking his brand new Audi motor car. And by the way, that picture of the Audi on the cover, that's just thanks to Audi in Brighton. They let me take the photograph there.
Oh, lovely.
And so I just envisaged seeing this Audi at the side of the road with the beautiful ferns, the trees, the weeds, the bushes, at sunset when it was dark. And I felt this has got to be the beginning of the book and probably the heart of the book. And that's why I decided to go with a cover of pictures from the Dandenong, picture of the Audi, and the face of Chester Jones.
Sounds
at the top
lovely.
of the cover.
And the Dandenongs, for anybody who hasn't been there, are just magnificent. I remember even as a little kid going up there, and the ferns were amazing. And, of course, weren't so many cars when I was a kid. We saw lyrebirds up there, and that was the first time I'd seen lyrebirds in the wild.
It's beautiful.
And they're just beautiful, yeah.
And for the kids, they go a lot there. There's Puff and Billy.
Oh, yes.
And Sassafras or Sassy and Olinda with quaint coffee shops and little boutiques and that scenery. And, it's lovely.
Now, there's nothing better than having some local Australian sites in a book about whatever. And you've got a bit of a mystery thriller, all sorts of things happening here. But you've also got some things happening on the Great Ocean Road, which is a little bit further, sort of southwest Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that and why the
Yeah.
Great Ocean Road came into the story.
Another part of Victoria that is quite dear to me. I love surfing. I love the ocean, and going for quite a few drives there since we are living here. It just sends a message. I love nature, and spent a large part of my life in the bush and on safaris, and in South Africa having a safari company, photographic safaris. I was the first in Africa to launch night vision safaris. But the sea on the Great Ocean Road, you look at some of the cliffs, the vegetation, the wildlife, it's spectacular. And I decided to bring some of the Great Ocean Road into it, and a very important part. And a couple of times I've stayed by the Cumberland River, crossing the road and going for a walk on the beach with my wife, and thinking all the time, because my novel, Will You Keep Me Tomorrow, I wrote that over about 7 or 8 years. So a lot of research was done into it, and being at that Great Ocean Road and standing on the beach there next to a washed up log and a few branches and shells, and just the messages were there, and there they were, and I was storing all that information for my book. So there's a major event takes place in my book by the Cumberland River, which I'll leave the readers to find out for themselves.
Yes, we don't want to give away too much.
Absolutely.
Because there are some secrets in your writing. You've admitted that's one of the questions that we ask our authors, is to have a little bit of a think about what you want to share with readers. But while there are secrets, you're holding them close to your chest.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing. Just something I must just mention very, very briefly, Veronica, is that what I enjoyed doing when I was writing Will You Keep Me Tomorrow were the 3 or 4 main characters in the book. Now, so the book itself, what happened with my niece and wanting to adopt a baby, and some unsavory person saying, you want a baby? Well, we'll get you a baby. So those were based on true events in my life. So there are quite a few secrets there. And I based the book, those characters were based on a lot of these people. So I could, the flow of my typing away of the characters that I based them on were quite easy. And I saw them in my mind. They were around, they were sitting with me when I was absolutely, typing the actual manuscript. So there's a lot of secrets in that book that I hold close to my chest. Far as actual characters, they don't know, because obviously names are changed, and I didn't divulge too much. Could have been a bit dangerous.
Yes.
But just the secrets of the thing again is I don't want to entertain too much, because it'll give away what's happening in the book. But there's some facts and a lot of research I did, far as how many kids are out there. Now I don't want to put readers off, but I researched a lot about kids that are babies, kids that are involved in labor worldwide, in the shocking sex market of the world. How many babies are aborted? How many babies are mistreated? It's shocking, because on one side of the wall, you've got people like my niece dying to have a baby, can't have a baby. They're solid people. They've got money. They've got education. Their backgrounds are great from a point of view. They don't drink. They don't even smoke. They're just solid, great people. So on one side of the wall, you've got them who want to adopt, they can't. And then you've got this horrific thing on the other side of the wall, where besides the people selling children for sex, child labor, and what about the street children? Here in our own home of Australia, we have street children. It's absolutely frightening. So there's a lot of there's mention of this in the book, in a speech given by someone, I won't say who, about all these unwanted poor souls that have to be taken care of as much as possible. And that's also one of the secrets in closing on this particular topic, is that as human beings, we need to accept and love. It doesn't matter. And something that's very strong in my heart is that everybody needs to accept what color they are, what they look like, what religion they are, what they believe in. And that is strangers, that is friends, that is close family, partners, etc., because my message is to the reader. If there's any problem or whatsoever in your circle or whatever the case, you need to address it and you need to love and accept. We are all equal, because then if you don't love and accept, you then need to ask yourself the question, will you keep me tomorrow? The title of my book.
It's obvious that there are some really key emotions for you attached to the conversations that you had with your niece those many years ago, and the seeds were laid down, and also those grey ethical borders about our care for children as a world, as a nation, as a state, all those kind of things. When you wrote your book, obviously you felt a lot of those personal connections going in. How hard is it then to put that book out in the world? It's taken you 7 to 8 years, but tell me a little bit about putting that book out in the world. How did that feel once it was published?
Yeah, Veronica, although it's commercial fiction and mystery, there's drama in it. There's a thriller in it. There's so much in it. There's murder in it. There's romance in it. And I'm convinced that whoever reads it will love it. There's something in there almost for everybody. That's what I decided to do. I decided to bring in all these ingredients, thriller, mystery, murder, romance, etc., to keep everybody on the edge of the seat. And that's pretty much it.
Very good.
And again, never forgetting what goes on out in the world today. It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
So what sort of books do you like to read yourself? Are you a mystery thriller person, and so do you love that same kind of thing? I love fiction and I love nonfiction. I love mystery, thrillers. I like reading about crime. I read a nice book called The Job by Charlie Bazina about his crime experiences as a policeman in Australia. I read an incredible book called Shark Arm by Philip Rooper of an incident that took place in Sydney in the aquarium in 1935. I don't want to scare people off. It's got nothing to do with my book. Oh, that's all right. Australia is a very scary place. A lot of people overseas worry about our wildlife and our insects and our reptiles, so that's okay. So that book, Shark Arm, that Philip wrote, was based on a 1935 incident where this family were trying to get more business, and at their, I think it was a coffee shop, and they built an aquarium. And so when a large shark, like a great white or a tiger shark, was caught in the nets or caught by a fisherman, the blokes used to bring it over to his aquarium to try and capture the excitement of people, and then they would spend money and whatever the case. And there was that incident where they caught this tiger shark, brought it to the aquarium. There were about 40 people looking at it. I hope you're sitting down. I am.
and the tiger shark, while they were all looking at it, the tiger shark regurgitated, brought up an actual arm of a person.
Oh, gross.
But the arm wasn't chewed. When the police examined it, they found that the bone was sawed off straight. So how did that happen? So it was a true story. So nothing to do with my book, but an interesting book. But yeah, I like reading thrillers. I like reading crime, mystery, fiction, but I do read an awful amount of nonfiction as well.
What sort of nonfiction is your favourite?
Oh, there's so much. I wouldn't know where to begin. Something interesting I read a few weeks ago, and since a couple of months ago, but since then I've read 2 or 3 books, and that was on Leopard Rock by Wilbur Smith. It was a memoir.
Oh, right, yep.
Now, an interesting thing is because Wilbur Smith loved reading, but Wilbur today is in his early 80s, and he used to love reading. at school, come home and go to his bedroom and read. And his father wouldn't like him to read because he said there's so much to do. There's work to be done on the farm. What do you want to read and imagine all these things in your mind for when you could be working or enjoying yourself doing something, which was weird. And he used to shout at Wilbur and punish him. So Wilbur used to come home from school and go to an outside toilet and read in the toilet.
Where there's a will, there is a way.
And a nice thing that I picked up from On Leopard Rock by Wilbur Smith, besides that, the father, although his mom did read to him when dad wasn't around, an interesting thing was that he submitted his first manuscript to 29 at the time, and a lot of the big publishers have been around for a long time, and even then, obviously, he submitted to 29 of the world's top publishers his first manuscript, and every single one of them rejected his manuscript. And then he took a lull in his writing. He then thought about something and the history of his family and blended this all in and published his first book. And, it just took off like a rocket.
Yes, the rest is history.
It's history, and he's published 39 books and sold 142 million books.
There you go. And I have read a couple of his. I don't remember when I was in a mystery thriller kind of phase, but I did read some of those and enjoyed them. And it brought the South African landscape very much to life. So you started life in South Africa, but you've seen a fair bit of the world. So what's your favourite country?
A rhetorical question. Australia, we first visited, my wife and I, about 32 years ago. And I loved it so much, and my wife, we just loved it. Just everything about it. We really loved it. We stayed in Sydney. Although we're happy and settled in Melbourne, I miss Sydney only because of the surfing. Here we have to go back to the Great Ocean Road. Family of mine moved to Australia about 42, 43 years ago. So we visited them, and we actually stayed with friends of ours and just found it to be absolutely fascinating. Everything I find fascinating about this country. I've seen many countries in my lifetime, but here I'm at home with absolutely everything. Something interesting, I'm holding in my hand now a penny, an Australian penny that's dated 1951, the year I was born.
Oh, there you go. I hope it wasn't a 1935 penny, I think, which is extremely rare and probably worth
Oh, I
money.
wish it was. But this 1951 penny that I'm holding was given to me by an aunt who visited Australia. And she came back and she gave me this penny and an Akubra hat. Well, I've got a beautiful Akubra hat here, but I don't know what happened to that one because I was only about 12 or 13 years old when I was given this penny at the time, which was in the 60s, mid-60s.
Would have been before 1966 because we changed to decimal currency at that stage.
Okay, so I've kept this penny until this day, and I'd love to have that Akubra hat back. But I love Australia, and I guess it's been said many times, the greatest mistake I think that I ever made was not coming out earlier. We should have come out earlier.
Very good. Well, we are glad you're here and glad you're writing. So let's just touch on those adventures that you mentioned. You had an adventurous life as a young man. Have you got perhaps one story that you're happy to share about those adventures?
Again, you'd have to book me to talk for a week.
Okay.
No, but I'll share something with you that inspired me and touched my heart.
That sounds good.
I was very adventurous as a youngster. I remember speaking 2 or 3 years ago to a very close friend of mine who's a professional masseur in London. And he said to me, do you know, I don't want to mention the name, but it was probably one of the most well-known people in Australia. He said, do you know this person because she's coming to me for a massage? And I said, Neil, I don't know her, but I know who she is. But anyway, he said to me on the phone when I spoke to him, I came to play with you when you were about 8 years old, and the boys were kicking a ball and you were lifting rocks looking for snakes and scorpions. So, and that's why the late Steve Irwin to me, he was great. My middle name is Erwin, and I'm
Yes.
Steve or Stephen. And I did a lot of adventurous stuff in the bush. I was the first in Africa to start night vision safaris, taking a lot of people out in a 4x4 and also during the day for bushwalks amongst the big five, like lion, leopard, rhino, elephant, and buffalo. I had a lot of adventures when I was in the military and in an anti-terrorist squad in the Israeli border police, and then became an agent. Too many, and a lot of them I can't even talk about.
No, I was going to say, you probably shouldn't tell us anything about that time.
But one thing that did touch me was in the early 90s, my wife and I took our kids to our optometrist, Joe Meyerson. This was, of course, in South Africa. And being very alert, I'm very alert all the time. And I find by being alert, wherever I am, whether I'm in my car, if I walk on the street, wherever, I'm relaxed. We were sitting waiting for Joe to check my son's eyes. The boys were only about 12, 13 years old. One was a bit younger. And I saw a gentleman walk in a suit, and he looked around and he was like really surveying the scene. And my hair was standing up a bit and saying, well, maybe he's just looking for someone, but I don't know. Then another one came in dressed very smartly in a suit and a tie. And I said, you know what? If I had to describe what I'm seeing, one of two things are going to happen. We're going to get robbed, but I doubt it because these two gentlemen are very well dressed. Or maybe they're bodyguards. And lo and behold, a second later, Nelson Mandela walks into Joe Meyerson's place. And he looks straight, and we were the only ones there besides Mandela and his two bodyguards and his driver outside. And he looked straight at me and straight at my kids and my wife, and he walked straight up to us. And this is just amazing. And
that would be so good.
My kids and my wife, they almost, their mouth, they were smiling like you cannot imagine.
Yeah.
And I was excited, but I wasn't smiling as much because I had something on my heart. And I thought this is the perfect opportunity to share it with him. Mm-hmm. And he actually, the first thing he said to my son was, what glasses are you looking at? And my son said to him, these Adidas over there. And he said, are you looking at them because they're comfortable or because of the name? So that was lovely. And we laughed. And then he looked at me and he said to me, you don't look so excited. I said, Mr. Mandela, Madiba, something on my heart I need to mention to you. And he said, what is that? So I said to him, the fences of life. We all experiencing them. We all experience them. People put fences. You experienced it. You were 27 years in prison, 27 years. And the fences of life are shocking. These barriers against color, religion, and so forth, etc. But at the time, without digressing, Veronica, at the time, I was very much involved in wildlife. As an honorary game ranger of the Kruger National Park, I was quite well known in the area because also, as a kid, all my school holidays, I used to work in the Greater Kruger National Park. Mm-hmm. And I used to walk around with a tracker, and my weapon was a knife. We saw lion on foot and all the big five. And I had a lot of adventures. Mm-hmm. But the biggest adventure was meeting Nelson Mandela. And at the time, what was happening, they wanted to open the boundary of the eastern boundary of the Kruger National Park and call it the Greater Kruger National Park and open the boundary completely to Mozambique. Mm-hmm. And I had a big problem with it, and I still have a problem with it to this day, because nothing I hate more than the fences of life for human beings, but also for animals. They're shocking. Animals should be able to migrate, eat where they want to. When there's drought, they should be able to move off where there's been rain and so forth and water. But I said to Nelson Mandela, you cannot, because it was his idea, I believe with Sir Anton Rupert, to open and make the Kruger the largest area national park in the world. Mm-hmm. And I said, you cannot open the Kruger and take down a fence of some 300 kilometers long when it borders Mozambique, which at the time was the poorest country in the world. Mm-hmm. They have nothing. They have no education. They have no clothing. They have no accommodation. They have no food. You cannot do it because they will come into that Kruger and poach like anything, desperate for food, but then they'll get spoiled by going after rhino and for the horn, and elephant for tusks, and for the very rare pangolin. And I said, I need you to take this home, Mr. Mandela, and think about it. The fences of life are shocking, but the one in the Kruger National Park is good. And you have to keep it there until Mozambique gets off its feet and there's education and people understand and there's employment and so forth. Then we take down the fence. Anyway, the sad thing is they took the fence down. At the time, there were about 13,000 rhino in the Kruger National Park. To this day, there are about 3,000 or 4,000. They're getting poached by the thousands every year. But so that was a good adventure for me meeting him. And then every single year, getting goodwill cards from him, which I have framed sitting in my lounge.
That's lovely. And having the opportunity to say what you needed to say, it doesn't always come up, does it?
Absolutely. Correct.
My daughter spent some time in South Africa. She was lucky enough to have an exchange, and she went to Grahamstown, which I believe now is called Makanda, down in the east, and spent 3 months there. So she remembers South Africa very fondly and came back with a little bit of a South African accent, and she thought that we sounded like Bogans back here in Melbourne. But she also learnt a little, and I won't be able to say, a little Xhosa. I can't click the way she did. So she saw some rhinos in the wild and one of the camps that they went on. So yes, not as friendly as you'd imagine, but yes, she did see some African wildlife.
And yeah,
it's that balance, isn't it? Trying to protect all the species, including man, but to have that global community.
Absolutely.
What is your next book? Have you got another one brewing away in your mind?
Well, I tell you what, I actually published a book about 8-9 years ago called The Apple Orchard, but it was a memoir based on my years in security in Israel, and I just decided at the end not to market it or anything because I just felt it's not me, kind of that's history.
Right.
So Will You Keep Me Tomorrow was my one that I've just published now. And I was extremely excited writing Will You Keep Me Tomorrow. On a scale of 1 to 10, my excitement was probably 9.8.
Wow, that's good.
In my heart, I want, and I will do everything in my power. It's not an easy road to have Will You Keep Me Tomorrow converted into an 8 or 10 part TV series for our TV here in Australia. I believe it would be absolutely incredible. I have quite a few connections on LinkedIn. One of them is Nancy Spielberg, the sister of Steven Spielberg. I honestly believe, and I'm a modest person, but the few people that have read my book so far, which are 2 book clubs, a couple of people have put posts on Amazon, ratings and that, have said to me, this will make a TV series like never before. And I said, I know, I agree. But it's not easy because they will not accept work from any man in the street, unsolicited stuff. And that is a problem. But I have written, and I still write a few articles for travel magazines. I love nature. So I'm always writing about Africa. I've had a lot of close encounters with wildlife. I've been charged by a lion full on. I've been treated by a rhino. I've had a lot of adventures. So I've written quite a lot as well. And I had a safari business called Wild Savannah Safaris. And I used to get sort of like quite well-known people and celebrities because it was high-end, upmarket, comfort. And I used to take these people on night vision safaris as well as animal capture safaris. I used to work with a vet, a wild vet called Pete. And so if he had to relocate lions because there were too many in a certain area, or he had to put a satellite collar or ear notching on rhino to monitor them and make sure that they're safe, he used to say, Stephen, next week, next month, I've got to. So I used to involve tourists with this as well. So based on all these experiences, I've written and have done quite a few international articles on this. Travel Africa in England a couple of times, an American magazine. I still write the odd article for South African magazine, Getaway, and yes. And I've actually written a couple in an Australian magazine as well. So that was, but coming back to Will You Keep Me Tomorrow, I could see a follow-up, a sequel taking place of some sort. But I wouldn't do it unless it makes a screen. And then if producers were interested at some stage, years down the line, I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, I could easily do another book and have a continuation and have all these ideas in my head.
Take
what
the
I would
characters
do.
through, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Stephen, have you looked at some of the writers' centres who have programs? So, and I'm thinking of this because it's not that long ago that we chatted with Laurie J. Ellis, who's the CEO of the Queensland Writers' Centre, and they've got a program called Adaptable, where it's looking for material for film or television, and you can register your interest, and there's competitions, and you can get a chance to the successful applicant gets a chance to pitch their story or their publication ready novels, or whatever that might be, to producers and showrunners and screenwriters. So I know that Queensland have it. I've got a feeling Victoria does something as well. But if you're a member of a writers' centre in whatever state, then your membership covers you for applying for things around the others as well.
That's amazing. That's very interesting. I've actually written a pitch, and I've also taken photographs for my pitch.
Very good.
But it's finding the right person. I can't find online or anywhere an agent that can represent me. And most of them will not entertain, as I said, seeing someone just off the street.
No, so perhaps, trying through some of these competitions to get some experience in the pitching and to get some connections in the community and get some feedback on your pitch, all those kind of things are really helpful.
Veronica, what was this person's name in Queensland?
Oh, if you look up the Queensland Writers Centre, which is queenslandwriters.org.au, and if you look under there, I think they call it a competition, but it's adaptable. So they have printable, adaptable, scriptable, I think is the other one, and I know there's a fourth one, which I can't quite... It's something to do... publishable is their fourth one. But just have a look at their adaptable program, and look at the writer centres around the state. They've got some great help for emerging writers, which is what you are, emerging with your book there. So that's a useful tip.
No, that's great. I really appreciate that. One thing I must just mention, I don't have my book is available for sale from amazon.com.au. Et cetera. I just have an ordinary Facebook. I don't have a Facebook for my actual book or a website. I had a website for my first book, The Apple Orchard. I think I got 4,000 or 5,000 likes, but the likes don't always help sales.
This is true. This is true.
But I will look at doing that, because whatever I can do to get the book out there, I'm sure everyone will be very happy and will love the book. So amazon.com.au, it's available.
So where can people find you online?
Oh, well, I mean, online it would be, I would say, look at Australian Book Lovers.
Yes, indeed.
And amazon.com.au. I'm also on Goodreads.
Lovely, yep. Goodreads is really helpful for readers.
My book often appears on a site in America by a lady called Linda Langton. I believe she lived in Australia. She lives in New York now, and she's got a site where she sends out quite a few thousand newsletters called Books on Our Radar. And mine has been going out with her on that site quite a lot. She's from Langton's International, and so that's another opportunity. But I am looking at the feasibility of getting an actual website. It may help. So
it look just
pretty much
so that people can find you, And websites are so much easier to set up these days than they were in the early days when you had to learn coding and all those kind of things. Point and click stuff is lovely. Tell me, Steve, what are your final words for writers?
I'm sorry I'm laughing now because something entered my mind which I wanted to mention, and I'll just mention it very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
This morning I went over to my son my son and daughter-in-law and two little grandsons who stay about 3 or 4 kilometers from us. And I walk in there, and I guess the internet's pretty powerful, but my very, very young grandson, Blake, I walk in and he calls me Pop Steve, and he says, Pop Steve, what building has the most stories? And I'm thinking, like, stories, floors? Well, everyone knows Empire State, but there are many buildings taller than Empire State Building, I think, today. So I said, you tell me. He says the library has got the most stories.
Of course.
So, yeah, I had to get that in. Coming back to your question.
Yes.
I think, today, for readers, you will love my book. That I am sure about, and it will leave a message with you as well. And I've covered that in our audio meeting this morning about everyone should be treated with utmost respect, irrespective of color, creed, gender, what's going on out there in the world. And for writers, just never give up. I always say to my boys and family members that know me that heaven forbid I get decapitated. Well, I'll just carry my head under my arm and get on with life. And that's me. I'm very stubborn in that respect,
right.
and feel that I will carry my head. If Wilbur Smith and many other authors failed, and then there was this massive paradigm shift, and they sold millions and millions of books, never give up.
That is
That's
great
my
advice.
message.
That is absolutely great advice. And persistence is so much a part, or needs to be so much a part of every writer's toolkit. Yes.
And read your kids, read your children. When I go to my grandson, he's only 4 years old, and he brings a pile of books.
Excellent.
I said, Blake, which one do you want me to read? He says, this one.
Yep.
We read it.
Yes.
Read your children. Read your children.
Yeah. It's
Living
so
in a
important.
high-tech
There's
world
so much power in words.
Absolutely.
Really is, yeah.
We're living in a high-tech world of laptops and Facebook, people walking on the streets, crossing the road, staring at their mobiles like it's a mirror, hypnotized. Read your kids when they are young, very, very young, and they will love their books, and they will read later on in life, and they will learn.
Worlds and worlds and worlds of information and entertainment and education. All of those things are in books, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So Stephen Irwin Fine, author of Will You Keep Me Tomorrow? Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with your sales and your writing.
Thank you, Veronica. Absolute honor to have been on the show, and everyone out there, enjoy my book. I know you will love it, and watch out for the TV series, hopefully starting in the years to come.
Excellent. I love your optimism. That's great. Thanks very much, Steve. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
So there you go. That was my chat with Stephen Fine, the author of Will You Keep Me Tomorrow? And Stephen covered so many things, and, the secrets that are in writing, and his philosophy, and so much of his life that sort of sits within all the details and the fiction. So, thriller, mystery, all those kind of things.
All the
and
good
his
things.
meeting with Nelson Mandela, just brilliant.
Yeah, and Mr. Fine, or Stephen, thank you so much for being a part of the Australian Book Lovers podcast. That was truly awesome. And hey, maybe, just maybe, I'll be flicking the channels one day.
And there will
and there it'll be.
And we'll say, hey, we remember when he was just just an author. What can I say that? We remember when he began as an author. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So good luck, Stephen, with all of those things for your, turning your book into a TV series. Yeah, absolutely. Now it's time for some quotes, Darren. What have you got?
Yeah, it's been a while, so it's good. So, I definitely have not 3, not 4, but 2. Two quotes today.
Yep.
So, and I base mine on a little bit of the idea of settings and or the characteristics of the surroundings. So, I'll start with my first one, and this is by Roman Payne, and it comes from a book called Cities and Countries. And the quote reads as follows: "Cities were always like people, showing their varying personalities to the traveller. Depending on the city and on the traveller, there might begin a mutual love or dislike, friendship or enmity. Where one city will rise a certain individual to glory, it will destroy another who is not suited to its personality. Only through travel can we know where we belong or not, where we are loved and where we are rejected." So that was by Roman Payne from Cities and Countries.
Lovely. I think travel is such an important part of life, even if it's travel to another suburb. But yeah, it opens your minds, helps you find who you are. Yeah.
I like that where one city will rise a certain individual to glory, it will destroy another who is not suited to its personality. And I think that's so true in the sense of, some people love one particular city or feel like it, you go to another city and you're like, oh, I'm not getting the vibe. And I think even, do you know what, there is even, I wouldn't say suburbs, but areas, there's some places I go where the vibe's just not there, almost like it feels like I shouldn't be in those places, whether it be here or overseas. And it's really strange. I can't put my finger on it. It's just something about, now it could be the lighting at the time, maybe. I don't know how it works.
Could be why you're there.
Well, could be, absolutely. There's probably a number of scientifically plausible reasons, but I choose ghosts. No. But yeah, there's definitely places where I go and it just, the vibe isn't there. And, where someone else might love it.
Reminds me of a book by N.K. Jemisin, American sci-fi author, and she wrote a book called The City We Became. And every city has a soul, and this is the awakening of, in this case, New York City, where she lives, so she knows it well. And the people within it create and nurture the birth, really, of this city. Despite it having been around for ages, the city is born, and it's just, it's a beautiful concept. And I think, perhaps you saying that some cities just don't connect with you, that's, a part of it is that their soul's not quite there yet. Okay, a slightly different quote for you today.
Yeah, what have you got?
This is from Auguries of Innocence by William Blake. And you'll know the quote as soon as I say it. But anyway, just, of course, telling you that William Blake was an English poet, painter and printmaker. He was around the... he was born in 1757, so it's been a while. To see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour.
Yeah, beautiful.
That's lovely, isn't it? And the whole poem is just magnificent, so it's worth having a bit of a look. And the smallest thing, eternity in an hour, a world in a grain of sand, and really that is describing, having setting and worlds and all of those things. Just brilliant. Yeah.
Although it was probably ahead of his time too, because going into the physics side of things, well, you can keep going down, from atomic level and all the way down, and I don't think there is an end. So it's pretty much holding eternity in every aspect. So I guess you can say we're made of eternity to a certain degree. Yeah, but I love that quote. Such a beautiful choice of words. Yeah.
Give us your second quote.
Okay, so my second quote is by Italo Calvino, and this is from a book I believe called Invisible Cities. So the quote reads as follows: "Cities, like dreams, are made of desires and fears, even if the thread of their discourse is secret. Their rules are absurd, their perspectives deceitful, and everything conceals something else." So that quote by Italo Calvino. So again, the idea that like Russian dolls, everything there's layers within layers within layers. Yeah. And so a city does have nightmares, that people have lived, does have, beautiful desires that have come true too. All those things. And, how does it affect the energy of the city? Well, only one way to find out is to just go get lost among her streets. Yeah. I love getting lost in a new city. Obviously, I'll keep the address in my pocket where I've got to go back to, especially non-English speaking cities. But I love packing little munchies in a backpack and just wander. And it's just amazing
cities
what you
are not
can find.
my favourite places. I'd much rather be in the country somewhere, connecting to the bush, to nature, hugging a tree, feeling the grass, listening to the water. Yeah. Oh, look, I love that too. But if I'm going to be in a city, it's there's just so many sights, sounds, smells, and like I said, lots of different energies. Mind you, I do love Melbourne. I love my city.
That's not. You
Okay.
can't get lost on the streets of Melbourne. You
No,
live
'cause
there.
I wouldn't get lost. No, definitely.
No, so it's not. You need to go. Maybe you need to go to Perth and go wandering.
Yeah, no, I lived there for a couple of years. I
Of
didn't
course,
get lost
yeah.
there either.
That's okay. Brisbane. You probably know Brisbane pretty well as well.
Yeah, I've been there a few times. I had a brother who lives up there, so we spent some time up there. Sydney, my sister lived there for a while. Darwin's smallish, so reasonably easy. Been there a couple of times. Yeah, anyway, let's move on to my second
Oh, yes,
quote.
of course.
How about tomorrow, a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation and achievement is stored? Anonymous.
Okay, sorry, can you read that again? I don't know.
Tomorrow, a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation and achievement is stored.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Tomorrowland, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll
Oh,
get
yeah.
motivated tomorrow. Oh, I'm going to get that done tomorrow.
Oh, definitely. But I'm not sure if the motivation and the energy's there tomorrow, because tomorrow I might
That's where
bring
it's
up that
stored.
quote and do it again.
And of course, tomorrow never comes, so it's
yeah.
it's not going to be there. So I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Yeah, so I used to like putting things off. Now I enjoy doing the opposite. It's funny how your tastes change when it comes to you being lazy.
Yes.
Because now I just realise I'd rather, now, it's not a case of being efficient. I just choose when to be lazy more efficiently now. So
I think there's a Mark Twain quote that is, never put off till tomorrow what you can put off till the day after tomorrow.
there you go.
And I think, I quite like that one too.
He's definitely never shy of a good quote,
No,
Mr. Twain.
no. Mind you, having done some procrastinating today, yes, I can talk about putting up. I made some very nice date and orange muffins because my friend Janet from Winoga came down and stayed, and she loves oranges and she left some for us. So, yeah, very nice.
Very nice. Well, I say very nice, but I don't eat fruit and I don't like dates. But they say, well, I do eat a little bit of fruit, but I'm a vegetable man.
Well, my son, who's a vegetarian, he doesn't like fruit. He's terrible. So, yeah,
So, I
it's a
just
little bit of
think
a battle.
fruit is God's candy, really, and it's so sweet. And I'm still
dates are
not
very sweet.
convinced the sugar from an orange is any different to the sugar from a Coke. But I'm
well,
far from a scientist. I
yeah,
think
we
you
might
metabolize
need
a little
to-
bit different.
Yeah, we better need to think about that and
But-
give you some
actually, I do like
feedback.
fruit. I love
What's that?
Fanta. I do like fruit. I love Fanta. Orange is delicious. Sunkiss. Oh, that's a battle between Fanta and Sunkiss.
Oh, dear. I might have to have a chat with Yuki quietly. Yes.
Well, it's a treat. It's a treat to have a bubbly every now and then, or a softie.
A
So,
treat, yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now you got me thinking how we're going to do our tagline for episode number 50.
Indeed, because we are at the end of the episode. And of course, if you would like to hear more episodes, go onto your favourite podcast platform, so Apple Podcasts or Google or Spotify, whoever you like, or you can go to www.australianbooklovers.com/podcast, and there are all the episodes, and you'll find show notes, and they'll be updated pretty soon. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on social media on Twitter at Australian Books, Facebook and Instagram. We are at Australian Book Lovers. Now, if you're a reader and you want to get on the newsletter subscription and be in the running for some of the giveaways that we have, the free books and merchandise and that kind of thing, you need to go to that same website and go to the Book Lovers page and sign up. And if you're an author, an Australian or Indigenous author, you'd like us to list your book for free, then head over to australianbooklovers.com/for-authors and send us all your details. So there is no charge for that. We are sharing the books, Australian books, with readers all over the world.
Absolutely.
And
because the world will be a better place when there's more Australian books in people's hands.
Oh, absolutely.
This I'm certain of.
Yes. Now, I reckon weather. I think we can do weather. We've talked about setting. So what about a bit of lightning and thunder, and we're shouting through the rain?
I could probably do that. That's a nice easy one. Yeah, a bit of wind, bit of rain. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So,
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 50, and see you. Well, no, I won't see you, but I'm hoping you join us. Yeah, for the next podcast. Take care.
Take care. Bye for now.
Let's meet again. Where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.